is up and going next spring. And then Glanbia and some JV partners are building a very large plant in Michigan that just starting on it. That'll be open in late 2020. So cheese production continues to expand year after year. And while there is some consolidation at times, it continues to be a growth, really the main growth segment in dairy in the U.S.
What actually drives that? I'm trying to get my head around it because you said they don't really make any money on the cheese.
Yeah.
So is it why are they expanding right now? Do they have a positive outlook on whey demand or pricing down the road? What's going on there?
Yep, exactly. So if you're making commodity cheddar, commodity mozzarella, those are very low margin. Talking low single digit margins in terms of returns. You do get a benefit from building a large scale plant like this Glanbia plant in Michigan that's being built. That's going to be in terms of milk, 8 million pounds of milk a day, or 800,000 pounds of cheese roughly per day. That's a big plant. That'll be one of the biggest plants in the United States. And there is economies of scale when you build a plant that large. It's going to cost $500 million to build, so it's not a small investment by any means. But there will be some economies of scale. Where some of the smaller plants focus on, because they can't compete against the big scale plants in commodity production, those plants produce more value added products, different cheeses that they can get more of a premium out of the marketplace for, and the smaller plants get by that way. But then, in general, particularly the bigger plants are going to be, what their profitability is going to be driven by the whey revenues. And this is a long game. Right now it's been a downturn in the whey market, in the high protein whey market for the last year or so. When some of these plants that I mentioned, when they did the financial analysis several years ago, they were using WPC and WPI prices that are much higher than what they are right now. So at some point the market will come back and it'll be fine. But right now, I'm actually working on a project for the last 2 years trying to figure out how to make a smaller plant cash flow and show a good return. But it's very, very challenging given the markets, particularly on the whey side. Is
there any margin at $1.80?
It's all relative. It's relative to what the input cost is. So at $1, right now, let's use $1.80 WPC80 market, which is where it was just a few months ago. If the dry whey price was 25 cents a pound, then the answer is yes. If it's but right now the dry whey price is 45 cents a pound or 47 cents a pound, $1.80 WPC80 would be a pretty significant money loser. And that's part of the reason that the WPC80 price has been shooting up in the last few weeks. But still, if you used today's WPC or dry whey price of 45 cents a pound or so, that would say that WPC80 should be $3 or over $3 a pound, and right now it's not anywhere close to that.
So what brings the market into balance? People just take capacity down and wait it out? What's the mechanism?
Yeah,
did everyone you take capacity off?
Yeah, it's sticky because you would think on the surface, to say, why would I make WPC80 if I'm losing money on WPC80? I'll just make more dry whey. The reality of it is there really aren't very many plants or companies that have the ability to do that. It tend to be a cheese plant in the U.S., particularly the mid-size or smaller ones that have whey processing capacity, make one thing. It costs a significant amount of money to build that flexibility into a plant where you can make multiple products, because you end up with idle assets, and it's just the math doesn't work on it. So a lot of these plants, if they're making something on the whey side, they put in WPC80 and lactose, and they make WPC80 and lactose no matter what the market is, because that's all they can do. Saputo has some flexibility. AgriPure, Hilmar, Leprino, the big players do have some flexibility within their system. So that's how the market does rebalance over time. Is on the production side, is these larger companies will just see the unprofitability in a certain segment, and they'll shift, at least on the margin, some of that whey production into a different product, and it takes a little while for that to happen. And then you've also got the demand side of the equation. So it doesn't fix itself in a day or a week. It usually takes several months, if not more, for the market to come back into balance.
And then just on that, on sort of the timing that you mentioned, several months or more, it seems like this has been impacting Saputo for quite some time, and maybe all the players. Is there something different this time, or are there a few months left? And maybe if you could just speak to the sort of dairy cycle and how you see it playing out.
Yeah, part of it too is also this demand, and there's a lot of whey products that get exported out of the U.S., especially to Asia. So what's happening in Asia is important. Right now, the U.S.-China trade war is problematic for U.S. whey exports, and we've seen whey exports and dairy exports in general to China really drop off in the last couple of months due to the increased tariffs. So you have to make some assumptions on what that looks like going forward. I continue to be quite pessimistic in terms of any quick resolution there. There is looks like Trump and President Xi are going to talk in a few weeks, I guess, in Buenos Aires. Whether they actually come to anything substantial and positive coming out of that's a different question. But I'm not optimistic anything really productive comes out of that discussion. We'll see. That would, if it does get resolved, that would be very positive again for the U.S. whey market in general and dairy market in general, just other products. As you get out into 2019, there's more production coming on. Like I said, AgriPure Valley Queen, that's going to also be a bit of a buffer, I think, for any sort of big price recovery next year. However, the stocks have finally dropped pretty much all of the whey products below year-ago levels in recent months, and that's been due to really go back to last fall, Q4 of last year, early this year when prices were really low. A number of buyers and end users just basically filled up their warehouses with cheap product, and they've been working down inventories pretty much through the whole year. And now those inventories are getting depleted, and they're seeing prices move up. So that's why they're coming back into the market and buying and pushing prices up right now on the higher protein stuff. I think that continues into 2019, and that the margins are better in 2019, but still not great.
And as we go further out there, is it anything you can sort of pin an estimate?
Yeah.
It's just going to be...
Yeah, there are cycles. 2020 looks to be another higher price year. 2017 was directionally higher. 2018's back down. 2019 will probably be a recovery in the second half of the year with a higher price yet in 2020. The good long-term trend on the high protein products, WPC80, the whey protein isolates, even the lower protein WPC 34, 35, is that there continues to be, I think this is a long-term durable trend, is more protein globally. There's going to be increasing protein demand globally as you've got, between Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, lots of people moving up to more of more protein in their diet as they have more money. And so I think that is very positive long term for proteins in general and dairy proteins specifically. So the overall trend in terms of demand is good. It's just there will be years where there's going to be more supply and more production out on the market that keeps prices low, and then subsequently there'll be other years where things tighten up and kind of run in these cycles. So I think we're coming out of a year or so or two of lower margins and lower prices on the whey products, and it looks to be moving directionally higher in 2019 and probably another step higher when we get to 2020.
How much of the dry whey market is U.S. production? Because I guess we're talking about U.S. production here, but how is that impacted by production all over the world?
Yeah, the two major regions of the world that produce cheese are the U.S. and Europe, and that's roughly 70-75% of all the world's cheese is produced in either Europe or the U.S. And so that's where 70-75% of the world's whey production is too.
Yep.
So what happens here is a big driver to the global market, but then also Europe is the other one. Europe has been running up until recently quite strong in terms of milk production, cheese